Hello, everyone, and how are you? Today, we are back for another episode of the Wired for Success podcast. And today, we are going to talk about emotions. Emotions are a big range. There's a big range of emotions, but what we want to focus on is what do we feel as parents, or what do our teenagers feel that creates a difficulty into managing the parent-teenagers relationship. So we are the famous duo, my colleague here, Steve Costello, and myself, Patience Podevi. And today we're talking about emotions. Steve, are you going to start us off?
Yeah, why not? Hi, Patience. Hello, everybody. So, emotions. Emotions is a word that we hear quite often, don't we? Um, I got emotional about whatever it was, a movie sometimes, or I got emotional about an argument that I had with my teenage son or daughter. But there are a lot of other emotions that are expressed between parents and teens, and sometimes we don't notice them. Sometimes we don't talk about them, and we need, and as we were saying, Patience and I were saying a few minutes ago, we need to have these conversations. And we need to have these conversations because then we understand one another better. We empathize with one another more easily.
Mm,
So let's think about some of these emotions. It's not uncommon, is it not, for teens, for example, to feel frustrated by the boundaries that we as parents impose. And so sometimes we have to impose these boundaries for safety, to enable them to make sure they get on with whatever it is they've got to do at school. There's lots of reasons why we put these boundaries on. We have rules. Sometimes rules are for safety's sake. Sometimes they may not be, but more often than not, they're for safety's sake. But teens also, I think one of the biggest reasons teens feel frustrated is because they perceive that we as parents don't understand them. We just don't know what's happening in their world. We don't get it. We don't understand. And that gives rise to a lot of other emotion. You know, we can start drifting into things like anger or rebellion. I'm going to rebel against your boundaries and your rules because I think they're stupid. But they may not be saying that, but that's what is going on. There may be some confusion. My friends don't have these boundaries. Why should I?
yeah.
I'm just sticking with the idea of boundaries. There's lots of other examples we could use on this one. Young people frequently feel that they're vulnerable when it comes to fitting in with peer groups, fitting in with adult groups, fitting in with school, all kinds of groups. They feel vulnerable and insecure sometimes about their self-image. What do they look like? What
Mm,
sort of clothes are their parents buying for them or enabling them to buy? They may feel insecure about their academic achievements or their personal achievements. There's loads of things they may feel insecure about. And that may come home as frustration.
yeah.
So as I said, there's not just one emotion at work, there's a whole baggage of emotions at work. And then we've got the parents. Hang on a minute, let's not leave the parents out of this. We too are human beings and we too have emotions. We worry about our kids. That's an emotion. We feel frustrated because they're being resistant or they're volatile or they're doing whatever they're doing. It's draining, it's frustrating. We may feel pride. Pride is an emotion too. Pride as they grow. We feel pride because of their achievements and the milestones they're passing. Sometimes it seems like they're racing through those milestones and you can't keep up. But gets a little bit emotional sometimes. We too feel fear. I mentioned that at the beginning. We too feel sometimes helpless.
Mm,
As we talked about this before we started, I'm going to ask Patience to follow on with this in a minute. I saw a couple of posts on LinkedIn recently where people were talking about empty nest syndrome. it was interesting that the post was a professional post about the workplace that had gone into somehow drifted into empty net syndrome. And people were saying that they felt really sad because their children had grown and left the nest and they'd been left alone. Well, we're going to be experiencing empty nest syndrome soon. And we're quite excited about this. But other people are never going to experience that. And that itself is going to bring different emotions. So this is where you come in, Patience.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we were discussing this with Steve, I was just explaining that I might never experience this emptiness syndrome. Being a parent who's also a carer to a young person with disability means that your young person might not have the capacity to then be able to go and live independently. And this is something at some point I had to come to terms with as a parent, but you can imagine how when you first get the diagnosis, so I'm going to go way back, but when you first get the diagnosis saying that your child has got disability or even a learning difficulty or something that unfortunately will hinder how your child manages their day-to-day life as we do easily. You have all of these things that come into your mind and you're like, oh no, I'm going to do everything so that is independent. I'm going to do everything so this is happen and it can do this and it can do that. And then the reality kicks in and you're like, oh, actually, we might not be able to go to do this. You might not be able to do that. And that's when, as a parent, I feel like you have to go through a certain stages to get to acceptance and understand that, well, you will live with the circumstance that will be the best for you and your teen. But it might be that you don't experience emptiness. Or maybe you experience it, but way later than other wounds, you know?
Yeah. There's some interesting psychological essays in particular that talk about adults living with parents.
Yeah.
And they're quite interesting, you know, that's another set of emotions altogether. You know, so different emotions begin to develop because of that. But the point is, we all have these emotions as human beings. We go through various emotions depending on what's happening right now in this moment in our lives. And that's okay. You know, so young people, I mentioned fear earlier, they might be fearful of the future, what the future is going to bring to them. They might fear failure. They might fear the response that the parents are going to have towards those things. And all of that can spark anxiety. And anxiety can become very serious if it's not looked after. So the only way we can do this with our teens is to have those conversations.
Yeah.
How are you feeling right now? I'm feeling really angry, actually. Okay, no problem. Let's look at it. What's happening? What is it? What's going on? Now, I know that my daughter sometimes to that question will say, I don't know. But the reality is that she does know. She might just not be able to articulate it. And we need to have some patience. We need to be able to sit and listen. We really do need to empathize. And we can only empathize if we're really, really and truly listening. We can't empathize if we're trying to think of what to say in relation to what they're saying. And most of us do that all of the time. We talked about this before. That's not listening, not really. To listen properly, we've got to be silent. Just hear what's coming in. Don't analyze it, just hear it. Just get a hold of it. What does it feel like? And then respond when they're done talking. So we've got to have the conversation. So how can we have these conversations? How do we create the right space? Do we go to McDonald's for a milkshake? It's not something I would choose, but for some it may work, or do we go for a walk? Do we sit by the river? What do we do? What works? And it's important to think about that. Well, one of our children never liked to discuss things that mattered at the dinner table, interestingly. But in other places, it was okay, but just not at the dinner table. So it's about knowing our children. So what else do you think, Patience?
I like you've said a lot a lot of things in the space of time, but I think what I want to add is that as parents, you are human, basically. So you will feel frustration as well. You will feel anger. You will feel like scared or have fear, and you will feel like confused or even not knowing where you're going. And I want to talk about um, the single mother or the single parents syndrome. It's not a syndrome, but I want to put it as a syndrome. So what happens in the case of your emotions when you are a single parent often is that whatever you feel is not right. So not now, the family cocoon is different. The family cocoon is not made of the mom and the dad and the children. It's different in every households. Sorry, yeah, household. Um, so, but when we come to knowing that together, you've decided that you wanted to have a future and you decided that you wanted to have a child. And then there's a separation and you don't become a single parent. Everything that you feel that everything is lacking on a degree that is even way more elevated than if you had been together. So you feel like, if I'm lacking this, oh my gosh, my child won't be able to have this because we're lacking all of this. And instead of being just like, we like this, so we're going to do with what we have, it becomes like, we like this. So how do we amplify it so we don't we don't miss anything? And by doing that and by creating that often, what as a single parent, what you can do is that you can push your child to feel even more anxious and to feel even more to amplify their emotions that they're feeling, is what I want to say. So in terms of, and I don't know if it applies to anyone else, but I definitely know that as a single parent, often you want to get rid of the lack. You think that you've got the lack. Well, actually, you don't have a lack. This is what it is. So this is the full body of the family cocoon. And having that in itself is understanding that what we have is enough. We have all that we need. When we create this idea of lack is when we allow emotions to basically go everywhere, as I'm doing with my hands. So to gain back the control is to also be like, you know what? This lack, is it really a lack? Or is it actually an opportunity to bring something else in? And this is where I will come back to what Steve was saying before, when he was talking about the communication and talking and explaining things. So Steve was emphasizing how, as a parent, you need to listen to what our children are saying. You need to also find ways, and I think we spoke about that a lot of time before, to have your teenagers also listen to what you feel and to understand if you have any fear. If you have anger, why do you have anger? It's really easy to come out and shout and be like, oh, I can't do this anymore. And just put everything. Why? Why can't you do this anymore? And what is it that makes it that as a parent, often we are not able to fully explain to our teenagers, I'm feeling angry because of this. So sorry.
Yeah, no, I was waiting for more because that was absolutely
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, because, and the reason why I was saying that is because when you create this place where you say, I'm angry because of this, it might start from a superficial side and then allow you to be aware of a deeper meaning behind it.
Mhm.
So often, if you've been angry, I think we spoke about that in one episode where you've been angry every morning, you're like, where are your socks? Why is this? And you're shouting and going everywhere. And like, I can't believe we're here again today. It's been a pattern. And if it's been a pattern, is it really the socks the problem? Or
Mm,
if there's something else behind it?
absolutely. Yeah. A good way, in therapy, we often use in a training scenario the analogy of an onion. It's used in coaching as well. So the onion, so you take off the outer layer, that's the sock. And we talk about that for a minute and then we put it down. So what's underneath the sock? It's another layer. Oh yeah, that's whatever it happens to be. We take away that layer and then we keep taking away layers until we get to the core of whatever it is that's going on. We've got to be patient to achieve that. We can't expect young people who, let's be honest, don't have a massive amount of life experience just yet. We can't expect them to be able to tell us what is on the layer, 5 layers below the sock. We need to lead them there. We need to show them that we're listening, that we're supporting, that we're not just applying rules, we're not just applying boundaries. We're about more than that. We need to show them that we too have emotions. And somebody had a great little phrase. They said, we are not human doings, we are human beings. Yeah. Which I think is brilliant because sometimes as a parent, I've got to admit that I occasionally thought that I was a human doing. Take me to rugby, take me to football, take me. No, I want to go and have a beer with my mates. Take me to whatever. So we've got to be aware of those things. So emotions are something that we must be aware of. There's something that we do need to talk about. We do need to share. We do need to be honest and open. But it's okay to talk about emotions. That matters a great deal.
And I think another thing as well is that often we've taken you through a range of subjects within the Wired for Success podcast. But one thing that I think is important to realize is that when you're uncovering those layers, because really and truly that's what we're doing, we're giving you prompts to uncover the onion. What you are doing is that you are affecting not only your child's generation, but your child's generation. Mm. So you creating this open space is not only a way for you to manage your relationship with your child, it's also a way to manage how they will manage their relationship with their children.
Yeah. I think finally for me, that we need to remember that the relationships between parent and adolescent, parent and teen, are a massive period of change. You think about the journey of a 12-year-old from 12 to 20 years old. The change that goes on in those 8 years is phenomenal. And that provokes a load of emotion, a load of insecurities, a lot of securities, and other emotions that we've got to be aware of. So we need to treat it delicately and with understanding and empathy on both sides. That's it from me. I'm not going to say any more, except if you have questions, if you're concerned about the relationships you have with your teams right now, no problem. Leave a comment in below the video, or if you want to keep it private, send us a direct message. A direct message will always get a response. Okay, that's it from me. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.